All right, hello.
Hello.
So we're here with Dr. Maria Rebecca Schodemeyer.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Tell me a little bit about your experience working in, the psychology field. What field of practice do you work in, and what has it been like for you?
It's been wonderful. I deal in the geriatric community, so anybody 65 and older. And I deal with people who have mental illness, depression, anxiety, but I also do a lot of work testing and doing memory assessments for people who might have some memory issues.
Okay. What do you do when you have like a client of yours who keeps forgetting the same things? Like, do you deal with people who don't remember you ever?
Um, no, not usually. The referrals that come my way tend to be from neurologists. So these patients are either they come in themselves because they have a history of memory loss or dementia. Their is concerned about them. Their children are concerned about them. So they go and they see the neurologist, who's the brain doctor, who's going to take a look at everything in their brain. And the assessment that I do is one piece of the puzzle. So it's a 2 to 3 hour test where we look at different components of their cognitive functioning. And it's looking at immediate and delayed memory, attention, language skills, math skills, calculation skills, decision-making skills. And then I write out a report, send that to the neurologist, and then the neurologist determines what's happening with their brain. So with the patients themselves, at the end of each evaluation, if they're open to it, we go over what are some ways to keep their brain healthy.
Oh, and what might be some of the best ways for people to keep their brains healthy who might be living to older age and
Yes,
these kind of symptoms? Yeah.
can start right now.
What are those things you can do?
So you need to make sure that you're doing things where you are exercising your brain. So cognitive activity. And it's where you're always learning something new. So if you love reading romance novels, then you want to start reading historical novels. If you drive one way home, drive a different way. So you're always flexing and testing your brain. Join a class, pick up a new instrument, learn a language. The other thing is you also need to make sure that you're eating healthy foods, the right kind of foods. And a lot of people come to me wanting to know, should I take this vitamin? Should I eat this fruit? And right now, with all the research that's out there, we tend to say, do what your grandmother told you. So it's everything in moderation. Last year it was sugar, alcohol, some research that came out that said you need to watch, how much of that you intake. A third thing is physical activity. So it's always doing something, hopefully something rigorous. Like walking itself is a cognitive activity and a physical activity. Because when you're not walking on a treadmill, I'm talking about walking outside. When you're walking outside, you have to look at where you are. You're listening to the birds. You're looking at all the different colors. So you're also using your brain besides using your body. The other thing is you need to make sure that you get the right amount of sleep. And everybody has the different amount of sleep that's good for them. So I say whatever is your norm, you want to try to maintain that. And then if somebody has sleep apnea, if you have sleep apnea and it's not treated, then you want to do the treatment for that. Because what happens with sleep apnea is that you are not getting enough oxygen to your brain when you sleep. And when that happens, you are deteriorating the brain.
Wow.
So a CPAP is usually one form of treatment that somebody has. It's usually a mask. And if you start as soon as you're diagnosed with it, then you can improve your memory. Some people with sleep apnea report memory issues, feeling tired all the time. So sleep is key. And there's a whole nother section on sleep that we can talk about.
What exactly is sleep apnea?
So sleep apnea is, and that I can't tell you. I'm so sorry. I have the little handout in my head, but I can't tell you what it is. All that I know is that there are moments when in sleep where you stop breathing.
Okay.
And so people with sleep apnea have stopped breathing multiple times, like within a minute
Oh,
or
wow.
within an hour.
And is this
And
like
it's a
log?
lot.
Yeah.
There's no oxygen. So for people who are snoring, snorers tend to have sleep apnea, but not necessarily. And there's different treatments, because now there's one where if it's mild, learning how to sleep on your side, there's some sleep pillows. There's a device that they can put in your body that kind of helps with your tongue placement. So you just need to get that assessed with a sleep specialist, and they'll let you know whether or not you have sleep apnea. But if you do, you definitely want to be able to get that treated.
Yeah. And like, I'm sure you've had tons of different clients over the years. How long have you been practicing and doing testing?
I've always done testing, even in my training. I originally did a lot of psychological tests. So for people who come in, is there a personality disorder? Is there what type of mental illness that they have? And then in graduate school for my doctorate, I had my first clerkship at a community college where I did testing for people with learning disabilities and at a community, and so that was fun. So I loved that. And then when I got into my fourth year in graduate school, I ended up going and covering for somebody who was working in nursing homes. And as soon as I walked in there, I knew this is what I was going to do. I love working with the older population. And so where I live in California, anybody who is on Medicare doesn't necessarily have to be 65. You could be on disability and then you end up with Medicare. So you could be 19 with an injury from a surfing accident, or you could have years of mental illness where you did work, but then you couldn't work anymore, and then you file for disability. And so the insurance that normally goes with that is Medicare and Medicaid. So the age range is anywhere from 19 to 119. That's the age range of the people that I see. Well, my oldest one is probably 105, 110.
How do they come to speak with you or get tested? Is it virtual? Do they come into the office at that age?
No. So I started off in nursing homes. I would go to different nursing homes where I was living, and then I would be assigned somebody who came in with some sort of mental illness or who was on some type of medication, psychotropic medication.
Okay.
So I would meet with them, see how they were doing, and then that's where I would meet all the different ages.
Okay. I was going to ask, have you noticed any changes in like the severity and prevalence of dementia and Alzheimer's amongst people in a specific age range throughout your career? Or do you think people, like is the Alzheimer's epidemic getting worse, or have you noticed, kind of
Well,
just how it is?
the number one risk factor is aging, and we all age. There's no way to get around that.
Right.
And we're hitting, when I first started, every day 10,000 people were turning 65. So at the end of the boomer age, that will decrease. So for now, for at least the next 10 to 15 years, every day somebody's going to turn 65, and we're just getting more and more people who are hitting that age range, who are informed. They're super informed. They know. Oh, I was going over what are some other areas to do to take care of your brain. So it was cognitive activity, exercise, sleep, social interaction. So when the pandemic happened, all these social activities for the elderly stopped. And our office and I myself was inundated with people that wanted to meet virtually for therapy. And so what we saw was a spike in depression, anxiety, and memory loss, because people were just isolated in their homes watching television. So even doing a Zoom interaction when you're involved with other people is better than just sitting at home by yourself watching television. Isolation feeds anxiety, and the person who is isolated is not interacting and talking to other people. So then you lose your language skills. So social interaction is key, and then lowering your stress level. So if you can decrease stress, so physical activity helps with stress. So what happens with stress is cortisol gets released in your brain, and there's an area in your brain where when cortisol settles, it interferes with the brain taking in the information and disseminating it into its different files. So that's why they say if you're trying to learn something, never do it when you're stressed out, or give yourself time to take care of that, and then try to learn something. So take a break, calm down, get yourself relaxed, and then try and go back to it.
Okay, and so kind of switching gears here, do you, as a practitioner, as a doctor, do you identify more with administering the practice or like running the business? And do you have, like, how do you think about yourself as a health professional / entrepreneur?
Yes. So I never thought I would want to do this on my own. So it just unfolded that way. But when you are working, I'm an office of one, but I outsource different things. So I have somebody that does my billing. And so I had to learn everything about the business, how to market myself, how do I get clients, what does this mean with the billing information. We're becoming more and more electronic. I myself don't have any sort of system where my notes are shared with other people. Medicare had something that they implemented before the pandemic where if we wanted to, we could sign up for it, and then I wouldn't get penalized. So they took off a certain percentage because I refused to do that. Because not everybody needs to know the mental health information of my patients. So medical information, you want to share that with everyone, but there's a stigma that's attached to somebody who has a mental illness.
Okay, so just like kind of HIPAA, keeping things private,
Yeah.
Okay. And would you say, like, was there any mistakes or lessons that you learned in your career that if you had known like 10 years ago could have saved you a lot of time or stress? Like, was there anything you learned about running your practice or business that would have been good to know before, you got started?
I think I got connected with the right kind of people. So even though I work by myself, I rented space from an office that had 3 other doctors, a psychiatrist, and then 2 psychologists who have been in that practice for 20 years before I got there. So any questions that I had, they were able to answer that for me. And my referral source came from that psychiatrist until I developed, my extra referral sources. And then when I got into testing, I found out that when I would go to the nursing homes or meet with my elderly clients, when they talked about memory, I had all the tests that I knew for like a psychiatric diagnosis, but there was that part that was missing. So I spoke to my mentor about it, who trained me in the nursing home, and he said, my college classmate does that where you live. And I'm like, I have nothing to lose. So if anything, if you hear of something, act on it, ask, and then you never know what happens. So then I met my mentor who taught me everything about testing. He was willing to meet with me. I did everything that he said. He looked at everything that I wrote. He told me what to do. Anything he said, I did it. Right. And I didn't care. I'm like, I'm either going to fail and I'll learn from it, or something will happen and I'll still learn from it. So all of it was good. It didn't matter. Right. It didn't matter.
How important do you think mentorship was for you in developing yourself, not only as a health practitioner, as a doctor, but also as a business owner?
Super important. This field is you're isolated. You can either be in a hospital where you have to meet X amount of patients in X amount of time, which I didn't want to do. I wanted to be able to control how much time I spent with each client. I didn't want someone to tell me you can only see them for 6 sessions, you can only see them for one, and that's it. So these mentors of mine are people that I call. We've eventually become colleagues. They introduce me to somebody else. So each person that I talk to that tells me of somebody that may or may not be doing something that I'm doing similarly, I reach out to them, and it's a face-to-face meeting. It's not just a text or a Zoom. I like to meet the person that I'm interacting with. So today I've set up this group of 4 of us that do the particular testing, all different ages, all different levels of training, some expertise in one area, some in another, and we just get together, discuss cases, and then we discuss the business of running our practice. So,
So you got yourself a little mastermind group of...
Yes, it's actually called the Mastermind Group.
Oh, you got your own mastermind.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's a mastermind group for testing, and then I have the group that I originally was in this office with that I practice. We've been meeting once a month. Anything we have a question about, licensure for this, or I have this client, then we consult with each other. And then we're also supportive of each other where we know what's going on in each other's lives.
How you can coordinate, help, and put everything together.
Right. So the people that do therapy, I have that group, but the people that do testing, I have that group to work with. And unless somebody does both the therapy and the testing, then we can interact together. But not everyone is interested in neuropsych testing. So that's where that developed, and that just happened over time.
Yeah. And speaking of things happening over time, what started first? Like, you don't just, wake up one day and you're a doctor. What was that journey like, and when did you know that this was the path that was for you? Like, what happened in your life experiences that made you gravitate towards this field and working with these types of clients?
So I think when I was 6, I said I wanted to be a psychologist, and it might have been because I heard my mom say she wanted to do that. And then I went to school and I got my undergrad in psychology, and then I worked for a little bit to kind of see what I wanted to do. So I was involved in like social work, military education classes. But I found that with just a bachelor's degree, there wasn't much that you could do and much that you can say. So then I went and I pursued my doctorate. So that's when I knew, all right, if I need more independence and more say in what I do, and I'm going to have to go this far. Now, which field in psychology? That was super confusing, because you could do industrial psychology, and that would be where the money is. You could do forensic psychology, and you're dealing with a lot of the court system, and that could also be good money. I thought when I came in that I wanted to work in the drug and alcohol field. But after doing that for maybe 6 months to a year, I figured, no, it's just not speaking to me. And the training that I had a different placement every year. So I had a sense of, do I like working in a community clinic? Do I like working in a K through 8? But the geriatric position came up because a classmate of mine was going to nursing homes, but she was an immigrant from the Middle East. And when she was going to these nursing homes, it brought up all these images and smells and memories of her immigration to the United States, and it was hard. So I was moving to the city where she was seeing clients, and I said, I'll give it a shot. I don't know. I don't mind. Right. And where I come from, the Manamko, the older people are a big part of my community and my family, and I didn't have that in the States when I was here. So when I went there, I was like, oh, they're going to talk about, a lot of them wanted to talk about their life. And when you're in a nursing home and you can't move, all these memories pop up for you because you can't go out and run, you lose a lot of your friends and your family, so you're stuck with all these thoughts. So that's where I did that. And then I eventually got an office, and then I saw people who wanted to come in for therapy, And then, still dealing with that same population, I thought, oh, I need to do testing. So, what the testing did was it gave me a big picture of maybe what's happening with the person who's aging. And so, it was helpful to see everything that I did before then. But then the testing just encapsulated everything. So, if somebody says, I have this memory issue, I can't just say, oh, it's depression. Oh, maybe something else happened. I can actually do these evaluations, and the evaluations will show me, is this a true memory issue? Could it be depression issue? Could it be something else happening? And it's not just me figuring it out. I'm now working with neurologists, maybe their primary physician. So it's more of a collaboration.
You had one thing that you said in there. So, like, when you switched places with your friend, it sounded like you might have related to, like, that feeling of being displaced, like the way that the people in the nursing home were displaced. Was that a feeling that you related to, kind of coming from your background? And that wasn't really something you discussed too much.
No, it wasn't a feeling of displace. It was a feeling of being around older people.
And that reminded you of...
Yeah, because I always had, like grandparents, or if you didn't have grandparents, there's always these uncles or aunts that you had to be respectful towards. And so that's probably where I came. Like, I never came in saying, hey, I'm your psychologist, I know all the answers. I always came in curious and interested in what they had to say. And maybe that's just the way I am anyways. So I would do that with somebody who's young. But that part of me, was, it just felt like this is where this is fun. Like, I love testing. I love working with this population. When I work with children, it was really hard. I'd have to go to therapy.
Wow.
Dealing with children, because in my field, you're not dealing with people who are coming in because they're happy. So it's pretty heavy stuff. And somebody who has lived their life and they're dealing with these sort of things, for me, made it easier to listen to than dealing with somebody who's newly born or who's really young. So that's just not my thing. Other people love working with kids. I love working with the older adults.
People have gone through more life, and you have some good things to remember instead of being sick at the beginning.
Although when I'm seeing them, they are sick. Yeah.
So what do you think you've learned about yourself in life in working with so many people who've experienced so much life? What's a value that you can, share, if anything?
I think it's always to be curious, to try not to have any preconceived notions of where people are. For the amount of time that I'm with them, they have my undivided attention. If there's anything that I can, that I have learned, or what's helpful for the clients that I see, is if they know that other people are maybe going through the same thing. It's knowing other networks and resources for them. So if they're talking about something, I can say, well, why don't you try this, or call this person. They might be able to help you with that. My strategy is always that you're not coming to me for answers. I'm coming in so we can figure out what's happening. But the onus is on the patient. So the patient figures out what they want to do. Or the spouse who brings in the person with memory problems is going to go out there and get all the resources that they need to figure out what they need to do. I can help them with communication with the memory impaired loved one, or I can help them with anxiety, but eventually the power is within themselves.
Right. And what do you think if someone maybe was struggling right now and didn't have access to, psychologists to speak their problems with? Like, what do you think someone could start doing on their own now that would make it a lot easier for them to work through these problems that they have?
Well, the stuff that's good for the brain is good for the heart. So you need to make sure you're eating well. You need to make sure you're sleeping well. You need to make sure you're doing something physical. You need to make sure you have a support system. If you don't have that, what are some areas where you could try to find that support system. Is there an interest that you have? And then go that route. If somebody's going through a crisis, at least in the United States, there's an 800 line that you can call. So whether you're dealing with somebody who's going through a crisis or you're the person going through a crisis, there are numbers out there that you can call to get that support. If you have insurance, most insurance plans have that mental health component where you call somebody and then they can set you up with that.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's good. No, I think it's important for people, like, I don't know where anyone's at, and like you said, not having preconceived notions, but I think one of the things that I always heard was you never know what's going on in someone else's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And do you feel like it's a good thing when your clients maybe don't need your service, or what's your view on psychological services? Do you think, like, are you happy if someone's like, hey, Dr. Maria Rebecca, I'm good.
Yes.
I don't need to, I'm healthy. Thank you so much for helping me work through this. Like, what does that feel like when?
That's awesome. I always say in my head, depending on where the client comes in, I never say that I hope that I don't have to see you again. But I always come from the point of view that I do want them to fire me or I do want them to leave because they feel confident. I have clients that come in and they just need a tune-up. So if you need a tune-up, you can give me a call. But the goal is always that they've figured out what they need to do so that they can continue on living their lives.
And after, so many years of helping so many people get through what they're going through, like, what do you have as your own support system when, most people's regular job is not so emotionally taxing unless you're in the same field, right? Mm-hmm. So like how do you balance when you're done with work?
So I can't listen to politics when I'm done at the end of the day. I have to do things that are like brain. I'm a sucker for Hallmark stories. Although I've been watching a lot of British television. I also went and I got myself certified as a yoga. I can teach yoga, but I got 200 hours certification, and that was so that I could understand what's going on with my body, and then that could be something that I could also help my clients with. Because I could always work, so I have to figure out ways to not be working. So yoga classes, connecting with friends, having a good family support, and then these other groups of professionals that I can call and talk to. Because wherever, different stages in my life, I had time to do that. Sometimes I would just have to, turn it off, time to take care of the kids. So in my training, they always taught us to not bring the work home. So that was always the training. And I just had to figure out how to do that in my practice. And it's changed over time.
And how did you balance your career as an entrepreneur, as a doctor, and being a mother? I think raising kids is probably one of the least high-paying jobs, but most important out there, right? Mm-hmm. So what did you, could you tell me a little bit about, like, what it's like to be going through your trials and tribulations as a doctor, as a business owner, while also raising, kids and having an amazing family?
So I've discovered that I love working, and I had met with a colleague a couple weeks ago, and I said, I really need to have more balance. I'm just doing so much of this testing, and it's a wonderful place to be. And then I said, hold on a second. Did I not have this conversation with you 6 years ago where I was also going to nursing homes on the weekends and seeing clients in my office on the weekdays? I said, I seem to be at the same spot, but with some other issue. So when I was going to graduate school, I had my 3 children. And I was one of the older ones, maybe in the middle. There were some people that were 20 years older than me, but there were also people that were, 5-10 years younger than me. And it took me a while to pass my licensing exam. And I always wondered, why is this taking me so long? Because I never flunked anything. I always aced everything. And I couldn't pass this test. I took this test 5 times. And I could only take it once a year. So I had to wait till the next year, study for it, take the test. And I think, you know, I have to trust that God had a plan in his mind, and he knew me so well that if I had passed that test that early in my life as a mother, I'd be working all the time. My kids would never see me because I love working. That's all I do. That's not all I do, but I love the work that I do. So it doesn't feel like work, but I can get just engrossed in it. So for whatever reason, that's the way it worked out. And then I had another 3 years where I had to pass this other test. And once again, I didn't pass it the first time. I had to take it 3 times. So it took 8 years to get my license. But once I did, you know, it was humbling. I developed compassion and other skills. Had I always succeeded in my life, how am I going to be able to be empathetic to the client who comes in who's not succeeding? So to hit that in my 30s versus, you know, not succeeding when I was younger, it would have made me, I would have been a different, I'd be a different person. I wouldn't be as good as a therapist as I am without all that struggle. So I think that was helpful. Helpful to not have gotten it so quickly.
Yeah, I find that kind of amazing. I don't know, but a lot of young people feel like there's so much pressure on them to like constantly achieve at the highest level in their career, like before they're 30 or whatever. And so like just to hear, you know, you can go through your life, have a really successful career, and you know, like you could be in your mid 20s, your late 20s, your early 30s, and have a complete shift in career and rebound from that, recover, and still like build a beautiful life. And maybe harp on that struggle a little bit. And what do you think if somebody was struggling right now and they feel like maybe this path isn't for me? What would you say to them?
Sit with it, write, journal. I find that during those times, I journaled a lot. I wrote down what I wanted. You know, it doesn't, things don't happen right away. Even when you start a practice, it takes 8 to 10 years to develop that. So I started learning testing in 2013. I would have to say it wasn't until last year. So what is it, 2024 is when it really picked up. But I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, maintain contacts, and then keep whatever it was that I had going on. But there's nothing wrong with the struggle, because wherever it is that you go, there's always something to learn, and something from there is going to help you in that next phase. So I say you have to trust. You have to really trust. If you have, you know, for some people it's, I'm going to manifest it, or if you have a faith, and some people don't. So it's just putting one foot in front of the other, doing the next thing. Continue to treat everybody around you the way you want to be treated. Then, you know, who knows what can happen from that. And I know when I was not passing my test, and I wasn't in my 20s, I was in my 30s. So I would hear and see the people that I went to school with and where they were at in their career. And I wasn't there. So I had to deal with that. I had to accept, okay, I'm not perfect. That's not where I thought I wanted to be. But if I got stuck there, it prevents me from being present in where I'm at right now. So that forced me to be present with my kids. And luckily, they were so little and so young that you really have no choice but to pay attention to what they're doing. And, you know, so what I got out of that is, okay, I have a family, whereas my other colleagues who might have started off and just focus on their career might not have that family today, but who says that they won't have that family later? So I think everything happens for that person. And it's, for me, it just happened the way the way it was meant to be, and I just had to learn to not fight it. You just have to work on acceptance and then trying to find the positive in it. But I had to make sure I took care of myself. So it's the eating, the sleeping, the socialization, the physical activity, learning something. So just because I'm not doing psychology, what else could I learn? There's always something to learn.
Right. Now, if there was like one thing that you kind of just wish would exist in the world that doesn't exist right now. This is kind of just a fun ball, wacky question.
One thing that exists that doesn't exist?
That you would want to exist that doesn't exist now.
That's a hard question for me because in my struggle, I had to learn to stay in the present and then to look at what does exist. Right. Because if I get lost in how I wanted things to be, I could get so lost in that daydream that then I become irritated with where I am. Then I'm irritated with my husband, or I'm irritated with my kids, or I'm irritated with my home, or I'm irritated with the car that I drive. And that takes away the joy of, this is what I got and it's wonderful. So if I go too far there, it's for me, maybe that works for other people. What do I wish would exist now that doesn't exist anymore? I'm going to have to think about that one. I have to say I don't, other than peace, less turmoil. I think if we look, we could find more kindness, that's around you, even though we're, maybe it would be, the media and all the stuff that they're putting out there that kind of interferes with your sanity. If we could have media out there, and it probably doesn't sell anything, but it's all good news, or it's all, information where people are being courteous to each other. If I read that kind of stuff or watched that kind of stuff, and that be part of the news, the daily news, it could be at the local level or the national level. That would be wonderful.
Positive news.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Well, hey, I'm hoping to create a little bit of that if I can then and implement that. But
that'd be wonderful.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience. I'm sure we could probably go on more, but I think that was like pretty awesome to hear your journey, and there's obviously tons of other things to get into. Was there anything, that like left unsaid that, you might want to say to your younger self who, is still struggling through trying to figure things out? Like what advice would you give to your younger self right now from where you are?
I would say breathe in, breathe out, enjoy where you're at right now. Try to connect and find the relationships of the people around you. Try to have fun, even though it's not where I want to be or where you want to be. Try to have fun or joy in what's there. Try to look for what is working or what is positive, because you can always find something.
Right. Well, that's a beautiful mindset to have. I think the world would be a better place if we all adopted some of that. So.
Well, thank you.
Of course. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Say bye to the free world.
Oh, bye, free world. That's right. I can't wait to read or watch or hear what Free World does with this. I think that's a great media platform to be able to incorporate entrepreneurship, arts, and sports.
That's right. That's how we stay healthy, right?
Yeah, it is. It is, because you're always learning something new. You're moving your body. And the great thing about entrepreneurship is there's many different types of entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur of one.
Well, you keep that business rocking and rolling here in the free world, and we'll catch you later.
All right. Thank you.